Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. What would you do if the person you love most lost everything? Career, reputation, and the future you dreamed of together? Would you hold their hand and face the storm, or walk away in search of peace? This is the choice to. Now faces when CEO Alex, once admired by many, falls into bankruptcy. Yet behind the ruins he makes a silent sacrifice, spending his last savings to build a home for Tuna and her child. But will Tuna stay when she learns the truth? Will Alex survive the crisis threatening to destroy his company? And what happens to the love they've fought so hard to keep? Stay with us until the very end to uncover the answer. Because sometimes the most powerful moments aren't loud or dramatic, but whispered in sacrifice and quiet resolve. If you're touched by this journey, please subscribe and help us reach our goal of 10,000 followers, so we can keep bringing you more heartfelt stories like this one. The air was heavy with the kind of silence that demands an answer. If one day, the person you loved most, the one whose laughter had lit your mornings, whose quiet presence had carried you through countless nights, suddenly lost everything, what would you do? Would you stay, fingers interlaced, braving the winds and rain together? Or would you step away, searching for a safer horizon? For Tuna, a woman who had weathered years of solitude as a single mother, this question was no longer a distant thought experiment. The man she loved, CEO Alex, had once been a symbol of pride and achievement, his name whispered with admiration in every corner of the business world. But now, the fortress he had built was falling apart. A devastating blow to his company had stripped away reputation, wealth, and the future he had so carefully constructed. Debts pressed in from all sides, each day drawing the circle of pressure tighter. Love between them, once a steady flame, now flickered under the strain of reality. The shared moments, late-night conversations, stolen glances in the midst of busy days, felt fragile, as though one wrong breath could scatter them into the wind. Outside, life moved forward. Cars rushed past. Leaves fell in their natural cycle. But for Alex and Tuna, time seemed to stand still, caught in the balance between two paths. This decision was no longer about passion alone. It was about resilience, sacrifice, and the silent threads that bind two souls when the ground beneath them shifts. The choice would not be decided in a storm of words, but in the stillness where the heart speaks louder than reason, and where staying might mean risking everything. Golden light spilled through the branches, laying a warm, trembling glow across the small courtyard of the farm. The air carried the scent of grass and wildflowers, a gentle breeze threading its way through the stillness. At a simple bamboo table, Alex sat alone, his gaze fixed on the dirt road that wound toward the gate. In his hand, a small red velvet box rested, its weight far heavier than its size. Inside, a diamond ring caught the fading sunlight, a promise he had been building in silence for weeks. He had imagined this moment countless times. Tuna stepping out of her car, her smile bright enough to dissolve every shadow, her eyes meeting his in quiet understanding. He could already feel the words forming on his lips, each one carrying a piece of his heart. For a few precious minutes, the world was exactly as he hoped it would be. Slow, tender, full of possibility. The breeze played with his hair, and the stillness seemed to hold its breath for what was to come. Yet beneath the calm surface, there was a flicker of urgency. It wasn't the urgency of business or obligation, but the awareness that moments like this were fragile. Alex wanted to seize it before life could interfere. He didn't yet know how quickly that interference would come. How soon the dirt road he watched so patiently would become a path he'd have to leave behind. In the soft embrace of that afternoon, hope felt close enough to touch, close enough to believe in completely. The moment shattered with the sharp, insistent ring of his phone. The sound cut through the golden stillness like glass breaking. Alex's brow furrowed as he glanced at the screen, the company secretary's number. For a heartbeat, he hesitated, torn between answering and preserving the fragile beauty of the moment. But instinct won. He pressed the call button. Her voice came fast, urgent, almost breathless. "Director, we have a major problem. The export shipment, it's been in an accident at sea. The damage is severe. You need to come back immediately. The situation is spiraling out of control." The words landed like a cold blade. Alex's grip tightened around the velvet box, the promise inside suddenly unbearably heavy. The afternoon sun seemed dimmer now, the once warm breeze turning chill against his skin. In his mind, the image of Tune's smile dissolved, replaced by figures, losses, and the looming shadow of disaster. He closed the box slowly, slipping it into his coat pocket, not just putting away the ring, but setting aside the moment he had longed for. Standing, his eyes lingered one last time on the dirt road where he had expected her car to appear. Now, it was only a stretch of fading light, leading him in the opposite direction. Walking briskly to his car, Alex felt the air shift around him, the weight of anticipation replaced by the press of urgency. As the engine roared to life, the road ahead no longer promised joy. It carried him toward a battle he had no choice but to fight. The city was already sinking into the deep orange of late afternoon when Alex pulled into the company parking lot. The air felt heavier here, laced with the hum of urgency. By the entrance, his secretary waited, a thick stack of documents clutched tightly in her hands. Her face was drawn, the lines of worry clear beneath the glow of the streetlights. "This is everything we have so far," she said, passing the papers into his grasp. "We lost contact with the cargo ship for several hours. When we finally received word, the seawater had destroyed a significant portion of the shipment. Delivery will be delayed, possibly canceled." Her voice faltered on the last word. Inside the office, yellow lamplight spilled across a desk littered with reports, contracts, and tight delivery schedules. Alex scanned the figures, the damage estimates, the grim photographs of waterlogged crates. Each page felt like a hammer striking his resolve. The shipment's value was immense, and the penalty for failure would be crushing, enough to drag the company into bankruptcy. The secretary's voice trembled as she added, "If this isn't resolved quickly, the partner will terminate the long-term contract." Alex leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled before his lips. Ideas surfaced and sank in rapid succession, none viable. He knew this could not be mended with phone calls or delegated tasks. It would require him to go in person, to face the partner, to negotiate not just for goods, but for the company's survival, and the trip would not be short. In his coat pocket, the velvet box pressed against his side, a silent reminder of the moment already lost. That night, as the city lights flickered beyond the glass, Alex sat alone in his office. The reports lay scattered across the desk, but his thoughts wandered elsewhere, to a decision he had made quietly, without telling anyone. Long before today's crisis, he had set aside the last of his personal savings, not for the company, not for himself, but to build a house for Tuna and her child. It was a promise he'd made in his heart, that no matter what happened to him, they would have a safe, unshakable place to call home. Now, with the company teetering on the edge of ruin, that choice left him with almost nothing. Yet he felt no regret. In a world collapsing around him, the thought of their shelter stood as his only certainty. He picked up his phone, dialing his mother first. His voice was steady but brief. He told her about the long business trip ahead. She was silent for a moment, then offered quiet words of encouragement, though he could hear the weight of worry in her tone. Then he called Tuna. The moment her voice came through, his chest tightened. There was so much he wanted to say, about the ring, about the house, about how much she meant to him. Instead, he kept his words clipped, telling her only that an urgent matter required him to leave and that he'd return as soon as possible. When the call ended, the silence in the room deepened. The velvet box in his pocket felt heavier than ever, carrying not just a proposal deferred, but a love pressed into quiet sacrifice. The garden was bathed in the pale glow of late afternoon, yet for Tuna, the light felt dim and distant. She sat beneath the wide shadow of an old tree, the phone still warm in her hand. Alex's voice lingered in her ears, steady, controlled, yet marked by an urgency she could not ignore. He had said little, but each word carried a weight that pressed down on her chest. Her thoughts spiraled. What kind of crisis was he facing? Would he be safe? Could he overcome it? The more she searched for answers, the more the silence between them seemed to widen. She wanted to help, to stand beside him in this fight, but every possible action dissolved into helplessness. Unbeknownst to her, there was a ring in Alex's pocket, a house being built quietly with his last savings. She knew none of this. All she felt was the ache of distance, the fear of being nothing more than a bystander in the most difficult chapter of his life. Her eyes blurred, the outlines of the garden fading. She pressed her lips together, holding back words she couldn't shape. Would Alex see her as someone who could share his burdens, or as someone he needed to protect from them? That night, after hours of sitting in restless thought, she made a decision. She needed to speak to someone who could steady her heart, someone who knew her struggles without judgment. There was only one name that came to mind: Mrs. Tang, the woman who had once stood by her through storms past. And so, with her child in tow, she set out toward that familiar warmth. Morning light spilled gently over Mrs. Tang's porch, where she sat wrapped in her scarf, the steam from her tea curling into the cool air. When she saw Tuna approaching with her child, her eyes brightened, and a warm smile unfolded across her face. "Oh, you're here, my dear. I've missed you," she said, rising slowly to embrace them. But the moment her gaze settled on Tuna, the change was immediate. She saw the heaviness in her friend's eyes, the fatigue that dulled her usual brightness. She said nothing at first, only guided them inside and let the child wander to a basket of toys. Then, sitting beside Tuna, she asked softly, "What's troubling you?" The question broke something inside her. All the words she had been holding back spilled out in sobs. She spoke of Alex's sudden departure, the urgency in his voice, the shadow of trouble surrounding his company. I don't know how to help him," she whispered, her voice shaking. "He's out there facing it alone, and I'm just here." Mrs. Tang listened without interruption, her hand resting gently on Tuna's hair. When the tears slowed, her voice came calm and sure. "You are stronger than you think. And right now, he doesn't need solutions. He needs to know you won't leave. Be his anchor, the ground beneath his feet." Those words settled in Tuna's heart like a steady flame. She lifted her head, meeting Mrs. Tang's eyes, and found her own resolve reflected there. Whatever storms lay ahead, she would not step away. She would stay, not because it was easy, but because love demanded it. And that's how, in the quiet spaces between fear and hope, Tuna found her answer, not in promises of an easy future, but in the unshakable choice to stay. Will Alex's sacrifice be enough to save both his company and their love? The road ahead is still uncertain, but one thing is clear. Some bonds are forged in storms, and they only grow stronger under pressure. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and help us reach our goal of 10,000 followers, so we can share even more stories of love, resilience, and the courage to never let go.